In looking over these selections from Thomas Aquinas, and keep in mind, okay, 1225 to 1274, okay, a long time ago. So this is looking at a document from a previous culture, at a previous time. So it's not exactly going to be written in such a way to really appeal necessarily to us, to contemporary people, 13th century theologian, right? So you have to work at this. But in beginning to look at it, I thought that there's a very simple point, but I think an incredibly important one. And this comes at the beginning of the reading in question 90 on the essence of law, and amongst many other things. What I'd like to focus on is what he says here on page 22. When you're reading an article from the Summa Theologica, you should read the whole thing, but the I answer that part right here, which is something that, of course, reoccurs in the structure, how he deals with questions, is always something you have to read, and usually the most important part. And in arguing that law is relevant to reason, or law pertains to reason, rationality, he says law is a rule and measure of acts, whereby man is induced to act or is restrained from acting. For lex, which is the Latin for law, is derived from legare, to bind, because it binds one to act. I think that that's quite an important statement, and especially in the context in which we're reading Thomas Aquinas as a moral objectivist, as we've begun to use that language. This is a quite important thing to just let sink in, that if you're a relativist, let's say a conventionalist, or a subjectivist, you do not believe in this, what he just said. I mean, that is, I don't think. I mean, because what he said there is that there is a law, and that law binds you. Law has authority over you. That once you recognize the law, you also recognize that you have a moral obligation to follow it, and that this does not depend upon personal choice or upon what happens to be customary in your community or culture. The whole notion of a law, in the sense that Thomas is exploring it and advocating for it, is that it's something that's there, that compels you to act. It doesn't mean you necessarily will act according to the law. I think that's something that we've established, that just because you're saying, let's say, that there are universal principles of the moral law, there's no claim there that we always follow them. Of course we don't. But it's there as something that we know that we should follow, and that if we don't follow, that we are wrong. So the binding is not like a law of nature where everything does act according to the law. The idea of law that he has in mind is a law that we know that we should act according to, even if we don't. That is, the authority over us is not a natural physical compulsion or necessity. It's a moral one. It has to do with obligation rather than necessity. If we believe in this form of law that Thomas does, we believe that there are certain laws that bind us in the sense that they command us. As rational creatures, we see that we should follow them, is another way of putting it. That's what the command is like. It's not a command in the sense of a naked power or naked authority. It's moral power and moral authority, which means, again, that we could disobey them, but we know that even if we do disobey them, they're still binding on us. And even if we don't act that way, we know that we should. So that in the sense of being bound by, or the sense of there being an authority over us, which is not merely our personal opinion or the customs of our community, is really the heart and soul, I think, of objectivism. And it's really all right there.